everybody doing? Good to see you here. Good to have people interested in history. Where's all our young people today? They'll get there. Well, we have these. We hope they're here voluntarily because they want to be here for history. History. I just completed an article for a magazine on pecan history a couple of days ago, and in that article, what I included is written history never tells all of it. We capture certain aspects of history with what's written, what's recorded. What's changing today is we're getting little bits and pieces of history with selfies, with posting on Facebook, and that even can't capture all of the emotional things, the ties that we have to certain parts of our world. It certainly maybe colors recent history more than maybe we were able to do in the past with handheld cameras and written notes. But listening and talking to people is the other component, being present with people who've come before and who experienced and today the pecan industry. What I've learned there's some books. We'll talk about some books. There's a lot of things that are written, things you can find in the library, maybe even in this library. But I've had the benefit of the legacy of professors, extension specialists, teachers at Texas A&M University who walked in my steps prior to me, and I had the good fortune of interacting with some of them, not all of them. It's fascinating how important pecans are to our world, and it is a New World, North American originating plant, Central America, North America, and prior to Europeans coming to this country, it was unknown other than to the indigenous people in Central and North America. But it's important in our world today. It's an expected, visible contributor to our diet, to our nutrition. And its roots here, as we alluded to in our title, the history of pecan being an industry in Texas. And it was a bigger industry in Texas first, earlier than it was in Georgia. And Georgia came after Texas, but surpassed Texas in volume of pecans produced. But the connection of Texas A&M University, Texas Department of Agriculture, housed in Austin, Texas, and the city of College Station, by default, housing Texas A&M University, there's there's a connection here locally, there's a connection to the state, to the industry, and I hopefully can reveal some of this for you today. So let's go way back as far as we can for pecans and mankind and history. And the documentation only goes back about to 6100 BC. And there's other older fruits and plants and utilization of these horticultural crops. Pecan only goes back that far, and there's three possible reasons. One being that we just have not done the studies, and the volume of archaeological studies maybe have not been done in areas where pecan was used the earliest. So that's one. The other is that when you eat pecans, they're easy to eat. You eat them raw. You can crack them. Maybe if you're with a real hard-shell native, you need two. And sometimes you maybe need a rock to crack or break some of these harder shell pecans. But you don't have to cook or char in a fire a pecan. It's charring a plant remains that actually preserves it for a longer period of time. And then finally, that pecan shells are delicate, maybe didn't have the durability to survive longer than where they've been associated with in caves, and given us records that they were a food source. Uh, the indigenous people, and we know from this man, Cabeza de Vaca, who was a Spanish explorer who shipwrecked in the Gulf area of Texas and wandered and we're not sure if he was completely free to go where he chose or went willingly with some of the indigenous people that he encountered in our area of Texas. But he's the first person to write and describe or attempt to describe a pecan tree to the rest of the world. And that's in the 1500s, about 1530-ish. And he made some interesting observations that we learned later were accurate. The length and duration that pecan is good as a food in the wild, 4 to 5 months, and that's certainly still true today. There were better pecans than others. And one of the things you need to understand about Cabeza de Vaca's experience, as with the same experience of the indigenous people that gathered pecan as a food, is there were no two pecan trees that produced the exact same nut. If you can imagine millions of native wild pecan trees and no two trees anywhere out of those millions produce the exact same nut. That is due to the seedling, natural variation, the outcrossing of genes, the sexual recombination of this plant over and over again. Every single pecan tree that grows from a seed is just like you and I. It's one of a kind. It may look like a family member or relative. There can be some similarities. But no one saw the same two pecan trees. And just like we know today, after breeding and being intentional and being able to reproduce a pecan tree, there's better ones than others. And we understand these indigenous people had territory. You stay away from my pecan tree. These are our pecan trees. And these were a warring tribal people that they probably wanted their pet or favorite trees that they would come back to year in and year out to harvest food. Pecan is a rich, calorie-rich. You may be worried about how many calories are in pecans. There's a lot of calories. Let's just leave it at that. But it's important if you're subsisting on wild game and wild berries and natural plants in that environment, in that time period, pecan was a wonderful, heavily utilized food. So he kind of made some notes about what this tree was. The closest thing that he could ascribe it to would be some type of walnut. He used the term nogales, nogal, nueces, and this refers to nut tree and walnut. And so this was the introduction of pecan to the literate world. He also noticed that they didn't come every year. There was not a reliable crop every year. Pecan is alternate bearing. It makes a big crop of nuts. It takes a year off. The year after that revives itself to be able to do that in these on-year, off-year type cycles. So even then, this man, Cabeza de Vaca, made some really interesting historical notes. There was other notes from there, and pecan and pecan and pecan. There was a lot of this stumbling over what this plant was because it was new to much of the world. In the 1700s, there are Frenchmen who are in the U.S. They're sailing up and down the Mississippi River, and they're seeing pecans in bags or in crates on these boats in the Mississippi River. Did pecan start in Illinois, which is where it gets the original name, the Illinois nut? Or did it start in the south in Louisiana and move upriver? Did it move upriver or downriver? We're not sure. But it was trafficked and used as a trade commodity in the 1700s as more Europeans became here. George Washington referred to pecan, his pronunciation, I'm guessing at, and he called it the Illinois nut. There's notes that George Washington carried these nuts in his pocket, was a fan. There are letters, documentation that he sent those to his friend, Thomas Jefferson. That Thomas Jefferson planted pecan seeds. George Washington instructed some of his people at Mount Vernon to plant pecan trees. Let's deal with the nomenclature and the name. If anybody here from Georgia? One lady here from Georgia. If you're from Georgia, and we're not picking on Georgians, pecan is the term there. And then in Texas, it's always been pecan. And we think, tying back to that, some of that early nomenclature. Well, this is an ongoing debate. And they settled this debate in a few years back. The American Pecan Council had fun with this and said, let's vote. Let's settle this. Is it pecan or is it pecan? And pecan won, so we're happy about that in Texas. And George Washington, now this is a picture I stole off the internet, and there's a pecan tree outside here at Mount Vernon. There were different iterations of a pecan tree being planted at Mount Vernon. This tree that's in this photograph apparently does not survive today. But as I mentioned, George Washington was one of our early promoters of pecans. They were trafficked in commerce. They were trafficked casually. This tree is what's called the La Bahia tree. It's on the La Bahia Trail. It's in Washington on the Brazos State Park. It's an old tree. How old is the tree? We don't know, 200, 250 years old. But we believe it was there when Stephen F. Austin came through and camped in that area. So that's a nice story. We would call that a native pecan tree that just originated there in Washington County or in Brazos County or wherever in Texas there's native pecan trees throughout. We have capabilities today to look at the genetics of this variety and know where it came from based on other genetics of other populations of pecan trees. And it turns out, surprise story, the La Bahia tree is from Mexico. And so someone dropped a nut as they traveled through on this La Bahia trail, dropped a pecan that grew up and became this tree. But it's not naturally occurring from populations of native pecan trees in Washington County, for whatever that's worth. The message here is that pecans got moved around a lot by people, animals. Anything carrying a pecan from place to place is involved in the spread, the dispersion of pecan trees over time. Again, up until the mid-1800s, every pecan tree is different. And probably every conversation that anyone had about pecan trees went something like, but I have a pecan tree that's better. In my aunt's backyard or down on the creek bank somewhere, every tree was different, and there were certainly some better than others. And there was always this desire to recreate or reproduce this pecan, this fruit tree. It's technically a fruit. To reproduce this fruit tree, the best pecans again and again and again through grafting, which is the way it's been done since biblical times in grapes and a lot of other plants. We could not accomplish that in a pecan tree until 1846. In Oak Alley Plantation, Louisiana, a slave gardener named Antoine successfully grafted a pecan tree. It was called Centennial. It's one of those in that list, I think the second one from the top. They liked Centennial. The landowners liked Centennial. Antoine succeeded in making more than one tree the same, and that caught on from there. And from then on and into present day, we graft pecan trees to reproduce them. We grow an understock or a root system from seed that's genetically unique, and then we graft Centennial, or we graft Choctaw or Cherokee or one of these things that you've heard about onto that. Old native tree on the left, old native tree on the right, being cut up for the purpose of top working or replacing the limbs with grafts so that you can take a native tree that might make a small jelly bean sized pecan and make it produce a bigger pecan. What you may not see in this photograph is in the top of this tree, is a man. And he's grafting that tree. And they like to do this on large old native trees, and you have to get some of the limbs cut out like that. There was also such a unique and sought-after skill that the grafter, not wanting other people to learn the skill that was now his profession, he was being paid to do this, to get up really, really high. No one can see what you're doing when you're 40, 50 feet off the ground. And a few of them died in that profession, unfortunately. But Texas becomes this native pecan, now introducing these improved varieties of pecan state. And we still graft much lower to the ground. This is one I did recently, and we'll typically do that waist high on younger trees. Pecan orchards in that day, they're a variety of different trees. Once they begin to move out of the native bottom and creek bottoms and plant deliberate orchards in rows and trees and straight and uniform, they were a lot of times just seedling trees. Well, every tree is still different. They begin to graft some of those. And the nuts are harvested by hand, just simply gathering pecans off the ground. My grandfather, who lived in southern Oklahoma, native pecan trees, they would climb up in the trees and shake, bounce, jar the pecans loose out of the tops of the trees, not wanting to wait weeks or months for the nuts to naturally fall down, and the crows and the squirrels get them in the meantime. So it's a very primitive industry, even in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But that begins to change, one from the standpoint of attention. And this is Governor James Hogg, who had he was very popular apparently. He only had one term as governor, and he was a character, maybe not unlike our current U.S. president, flamboyant, outspoken, charismatic, had a lot of people liked what he had to say about the Railroad Commission that he was trying to defeat, that controlled so much of trade and commerce in Texas at that time. His daughter's name was Ima Hogg. Now, there's a story behind that he wasn't trying to be funny, that she was named after a character in a book that someone that he knew wrote. And then he, not terribly old in life, contracted something. I think he was injured in an accident getting on or off a train, and became ill, and on his deathbed said, "I don't want any fanfare, but I do want a walnut tree on one side of my grave and a pecan tree on the other side of my grave, and I want the nuts from those to be given out to the great people of the state of Texas, so that Texas can become a land of trees." And so that was 1906, I believe, somewhere in that time frame. And supposedly the story is that he made this proclamation and then died that night. His daughter was present, noted this, and so they followed through and planted the pecan tree and a walnut tree at his grave. We forget about the walnut tree being planted there. Walnut's not near as important in Texas. Would go on, that kind of, he's credited with kind of bringing to popularity or public attention this idea that, hey, there is a pecan industry in Texas, and it's important. This is a wonderful nut. 1919, the state of Texas legislature passes this proclamation of Texas, or pecan being the state tree of Texas. And there is a pecan tree at Hogg's grave today in the city of Austin. I've been there. It's like the Mount Vernon thing. It's been planted multiple times due to storms or other things. But we're now 1910 to 1920 era, and pecan is becoming a farming endeavor. Rather than just grab them up off the ground and hope for what you get, farmers are now trying to make this happen with care and with deliberation and effort. And there's a lot of problems. There are diseases that they don't fully understand. There are insects that they don't fully understand the life cycle. There are nutritional challenges. this alternate bearing thing is a mystery to them, although they've known about it. There's a lot of problem varieties. And so there is an effort then by those people charged with helping farmers to put knowledge and expertise into the study of this New World plant. Texas A&M College here had an agricultural department, of course, and within that there was a plant science that became the horticulture department, and its first instructor was Edwin Kyle. And Edwin Kyle, as we know, those of you who are Aggies or follow Aggie football, the reason Kyle Field is where it is the benevolence of Edwin Kyle to give up his land plot for his horticulture studies for football. So maybe Pecan got delayed a little bit in his study from football. And which is more important in Texas today, pecans or football? I think Pecan is a loser in that situation. Kyle was an important man in Pecan history. He was this outstanding professor. He became dean of the College of Agriculture, so he's referred to as Dean Kyle, well-spoken man, and he teaches a class in the area of horticulture on pecans. He also uses that knowledge that he is gaining to help people at large. The Texas Department of Agriculture publishes a book with he is the author on how to grow pecans successfully, how to do some of the grafting, the varieties that were emerging, and so forth. He's also goes on to author, so he becomes the first, we call him the first teacher, the first professor of Hort 418, which is a pecan class at Texas A&M. And to my knowledge, Texas A&M is the only university in the world that has a pecan class in a college campus environment. So that makes us special also. He also writes a book that became one of the most important books at that time, and this is it. It's called Pecan Growing by Stuckey and Kyle, 1925. There's the name Stuckey, who was his co-author, who was a man back in the Southeast. Ring a bell to any of you? Yeah, so have you ever been to a Stuckey's and got a pecan log or any of the things that they offered? This was Buc-ee's model a long time before Buc-ee's got into convenience stores and filling stations. But Stuckey and Kyle were both the knowledgeable men about pecans, one from back east and one from Texas, and this book contributed a lot to that. Now, there's a Pecan Growers Association that's formed in Austin in 1921. There's a man here in the upper right whose name is Louis Romberg, and he's class of 21 here at Texas A&M University, and he takes on the job of breeding new pecan varieties in Texas. And he sets up shop to do this in Bastrop, and he would later move that laboratory, field laboratory, and pecan tree breeding program to Brownwood, Texas. And then it was in Brownwood, Texas from 1930 to 1987. Then they moved it to College Station out here in the Brazos Bottom. Romberg is really important. He is responsible for introduction of a lot of new pecan varieties. The first one was called Barton because one of his friends was John Barton, who was a Texas governor or state legislator of some sort. But then from that point, they named these new pecan varieties with North American Indian tribe names like Choctaw, Comanche, Cheyenne, and you can see the rest in this list. They paid respect to the first peoples that used and championed this nut and cared for it, brought it to our attention. So he's important. The pecan is again very primitive. This is in the 1920s to 1930s. Pecans are either sold in the shell only. They introduced cracking machines where you could get pecans cracked. I have the picture here. A lot of young people, students that I teach, they've never seen nuts dyed red, but I did, and many of you did. What was the purpose of that? Anybody know? Christmas. So pistachios and pecans and walnuts and a lot of things were dyed, and they went into stockings at Christmas time. And you'd get that red dye. I had a friend who loved pistachios, and pistachios were dyed red, and his fingers would be red from the dye. Well, we moved away from red dye. It took some time, but there were introduction of equipment, things that would pick up a machine that would pick up pecans off the ground, shake them out of the tree, prevent climbing up in the tree, and then clean the pecans from trash and shell the pecans. There was this Quantz pecan cracker that operates much like a Gatling gun and cracks pecans very, very quickly. So pecan is becoming a modernized crop, and you can harvest more, you can take care of more, and that attracted businessmen to plant more. So this 1920s to 1940s time period, there's a kind of a boom of land investing for pecans. This is a man named O.P. Leonard, who was a businessman in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And you see his department store there. I think that's in Fort Worth. And he planted 12,000 acres of pecans in areas like Granbury and San Saba and Comanche and areas like that. Now, this man, who I didn't realize I was doing this, looks kind of like this man. This man is not different. His name is Sterling Evans. Sterling Evans, the other big library in town. The Sterling C. Evans Library is named for Sterling Evans. Also, class of 1921. 1921, the class of A&M is really, really important in this discussion. He becomes a cattle rancher, a businessman, and he had classmates. I've told you who one of those was. Louis Romberg was one of his classmates. He was trained and took classes under Dean Kyle, and he goes on to plant the biggest pecan orchard in the world in Louisiana called Little Eva Plantation. So Evans, the library here, is connected to pecan history in a pretty significant way also. Pecan class, the Hort 418 class, here's Kyle on the left. The man who came after Kyle to teach Hort 418 was a man named Fred Bryson. And he taught the class from 1931 to 1965. Now notice, he also is class of 21. So Louis Romberg, Sterling Evans, Fred Bryson, all study under Dean Kyle, graduate from A&M in 1921, and they all go on to have a pretty big, important footprint into pecan history. Now, Fred Bryson, who I didn't meet, he was deceased by the time I got to A&M in the 1980s, he was considered Mr. Pecan. He was not a PhD, he was not a professor as such. He was a professor in title, he was not a PhD. So he was called Mr. Bryson, that was his appropriate title for his education, but he was considered Mr. Pecan, and he took from this time period of the 30s, 40s, all the way into the 60s, pecan industry grew, expanded what we know about pecans, and he was instrumental in that. He's followed by two other individuals that I did know and I did study under, which was Dr. Benton Story, who was my major professor when I came in 1988, taught the class 1966, 2004. We had Professor Leo Lombardini who came, and then Dr. George Ray McEachern. Some of you in the room know him. I'll come back to him in a couple of minutes. He taught it 2017, 2019. I've taught it the last two times. And so we have this lineage and we have this transference of knowledge of these men with pecan history. So here's Bryson. He's standing at Hogg's grave site, some type of ceremony they had. I don't know the date on this, but he helped kind of carry out Hogg's request, and they sent pecans seed to schools for some of the school kids in FFA, et cetera, to hand out and pass out and plant more pecan trees in Texas. Bryson in 1974 authored this book, Pecan Culture. It's a very detailed and accurate book from the standpoint of what we know about pecan, the botany and horticulture, and so that's important. Bryson Park, which is over off Dexter Street, it's near campus. It's kind of a quiet park. It's kind of a retreat for students to go and sit and study, and has a Billy Goat Bridge across the center of it. So Bryson was beloved here. He planted a pecan orchard for the university in 1952. And you have to go out University Drive to FM 50 and go like you're going to go to Independence. And it's about 2 miles down the road on the left. And it was planted in 1952. These are the trees. They're still there. We have a plaque there commemorating Mr. Bryson. And we still use this pecan orchard. And it's the pecans that you ate that I passed out were planted by Fred Bryson in 1952. It's quietly, it's kind of out away from campus, but it's a big part of our research teaching. We take students out there, teach them how to graft pecan trees, and extension effort for the university. This man, Benton Story, was a giant of a man. He was about 6'5", and he wore size 13 shoes. Giant of a man, giant of a scientist. Unlocked some of the secrets about pecans that we didn't know, the zinc deficiency and the need to spray zinc on a pecan tree if you're in high pH soil, some of those kinds of things. I studied and got my master's degree under he. There were a lot of issues to work out, things about zinc deficiency, insect and disease problems, water relations of pecan trees, pruning, on and on and on. The Extension Service, which became about from an act of Congress called the Smith-Lever Act in 1914, put extension specialists in the state of Texas and other states to help the people that were out in the communities trying to be a pecan farmer do that better. So we had the teaching with Bryson and Kyle on campus for students, and we had extension that goes out into the public and teaches growers where they are, or maybe brings them to College Station for a program or a meeting. So extension is really, really important. We have a county extension office in all 254 counties in the state of Texas with an agent. I serve as a specialist to help the agent address problems with pecan trees or other fruit trees. And so we've had some important people here in College Station because College Station is the headquarters of the Extension Service for the state of Texas. It's not only Texas A&M University. The Extension Service is a state agency, and its headquarters is here at the main campus in College Station. So we have placed specialists, subject matter specialists, at the state headquarters to be very depth of knowledge to help solve problems that emerge. Right now in the state of Texas, the cattle industry has a problem with this New World screwworm fly. It's a big problem. We have specialists here in College Station who are the experts on that subject matter and are stand ready to help the cattle industry with that. So we've had pecan people to do the same. And I'll mention them. This man up in the upper right is Bluford Hancock. That's him kind of in the far right in the lower left picture. Upper left is Dr. McKitchen, back probably the 80s. He's standing with a tie on and a white shirt in a grower field day type event. They worked with a lot of farmers. This is Hugo Pape in Seguin, Texas, who worked with the extension system a lot. So this has been important. So Bluford Hancock on the left, extension pecan specialist. George Ray McKitchen came in 1969 to replace Mr. Hancock as the next pecan state extension specialist. And he really propelled pecan industry into the modern age of technology. This is George Ray on the left, myself, and Dr. Larry Stein. All three of us have acted as extension specialists for the state of Texas since Mr. Hancock. Now, that kind of gets you up to date on how A&M and College Station has been kind of pulled into this pecan history. Where is the pecan tree today in terms of spread and scope? Hard to see on this map from where you're sitting, but there's a lot of orange pinpoints dotted all over the state of Texas. And if you were able to see up close, if you went all the way out here to El Paso, there's a whole lot of those orange dots in El Paso. But we have a lot of orange dots up around Comanche, Stephenville, Goldthwaite. We have a lot of orange dots here around Bastrop, Texas, down around Seguin. We can find them on down in Wharton, Victoria area, all the way down in the Winter Garden area, Eagle Pass, Crystal City, East Texas, Palestine, North Texas up around the Red River border with Oklahoma. There are pecan orchards. They are really all over the place throughout the state. About 87,000 acres of planted, improved, what we call improved, what some of you would call paper shell pecan varieties, 87,000 acres. It's the biggest horticulture acreage crop that we have in Texas. Nothing comes close. Citrus is about 27,000 acres, all in the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas. So from an acreage, and this does not count any native pecan tree anywhere, that 87,000 acres is just what a man or woman has planted on purpose. We don't know how many acres of natives exist in Texas. There's 171 million acres of land covering the state of Texas. We think easily there's 2 million of acres, which is a drop in the bucket for the state of Texas, easily 2 million acres that are occupied by native pecan trees in the state of Texas. So this is a rich, broadly grown, important crop. We've been passed. Georgia passed us a long time ago as far as planted acreage, and now although New Mexico has not passed us, New Mexico outproduces Texas. There was a lot of deliberate irrigated orchards planted in New Mexico. Arizona has even come along and is challenging Texas. We're now the third leading state for pecan production. We fell behind Georgia even as early as, say, about 1910. Georgia planted a lot of pecan trees and passed us in terms of production. We can produce in a good year 50 million pounds of pecans because when you try to describe Texas as one state, it really should be broken up into a lot of different states from a weather, climate, geographical spread perspective. We're a lot of states within Texas, and we have a lot of challenges across the state. This year, we're going to maybe produce 25 to 30 million pounds because we have some challenges around the state. We have a real well managed and operated Texas Pecan Growers Association. You can go to their website if you want to know where to buy pecans or you have relatives that want to be able to get pecans locally and fresh. You can utilize their website as a resource there. What's interesting about Texas and climate and pecans is that we capture really all of the U.S. pecan weather challenges in our own state. And let me explain that. So there is an east-west dynamic for pecan growing, meaning that about Interstate 35, Austin, Texas, and eastward, all of that land, all the way to the Georgia coast, is rainy enough and wet enough for pecan trees to have disease problems. So there is a disease called scab, and that's a problem here. I'm having a problem with it this year. If you have a pecan tree and it's susceptible to scab, you're going to have a problem with scab this year. Everybody, all the way to Florida and Georgia, has that problem because the climate affects pecan trees the same way. So we have basically we have Georgia in Texas on the east side of the state. Now there's also a north-south dynamic in that about the Red River area and northward, that's considered northern pecan growing regions. And the growing season is short, and you have to have a pecan variety that matures early so that it does not get frozen in the shuck and lost to you. So Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Illinois, Ohio, there are pecans and native pecans up in that area. They mature early, like August, and they're small, and they have to be early in order to not get frozen. So now we have that in Texas. We have that in Amarillo, and we have that in Lubbock, and we have that a little bit on the Red River area with Oklahoma. So we have the north growing pecan region in Texas. We have the west pecan growing region. El Paso only gets 8 inches of rainfall, and if they don't water every year in El Paso, their pecan trees can't live. And that's the same for New Mexico, Arizona, etc. We in one state have all the pecan issues and challenges from a weather and production standpoint, all within our state. Let's see, scab, from about where we are, Austin, Bastrop, and eastward has problems with scab. This is what scab looks like up here in the upper right. Pecans will have little pepper spots on them about right now, and those pepper spots will increase. Nuts will turn black. They won't develop properly. They'll fall off. Common complaint in homes and yards around Houston to Palestine, up even into the Dallas, Texarkana area. All that area is affected by scab disease. We have a central Texas area that's kind of transitional, gets enough rainfall for the trees to live, but you need a lot of water to produce a pecan, to make nice quality pecans, and they have to irrigate that area. Then you have the west and the north that don't get enough rainfall, and they rely heavily on irrigation systems in those areas of Texas. So I'm going to leave you with just a couple of tips. If you encounter someone said, well, I heard this lecture on pecan growing, and they said, well, did you learn anything about how to grow pecans? Because my pecans are no good. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 slides here that you can teach people what they need to do to grow good pecans. First of all, the genetics of your tree matters. Hopefully you learned today that every single pecan tree that grows from seed does not go through a nursery and have someone graft it is different. And they may differ in the scab susceptibility, the insect problems that they have, the size of the nut, the thinness of the shell, the taste of the kernel, all that varies. You may be fortunate, or your friend or your loved one may be fortunate to have a really good, nice pecan that they don't have to do anything to, and they get wonderful pecans from that. That's a great, wonderful blessing that you have. Not everybody has that, and a lot of the varieties are inferior, and you're going to always be challenged in this rainy environment to be good pecans. So if you want to have your tree identified, we can help you with that, something that we do. I frustrate my family when identifying a pecan in the shell is the easiest. When I see pecans in a restaurant on a salad, I try to identify the pecan variety from the kernel. And they think that's grandstanding a bit, and it probably is. Pecan trees need a lot of space. They need a lot of sunlight. So if you're in a thick, crowded, shady backyard, if you have a nice park situation going on in your backyard, your pecan trees may be having more problems with scab and diseases and not filling out well or producing the abundance of nuts that you'd like them to due to the lack of sunlight. We always tell people in home situations, fewer trees is one key to success. So the solitary pecan trees that are out in a broad open area by themselves tend to do the best as far as diseases and other issues. Water. You need a lot of water to produce good quality pecans. How much water? We say on mature large pecan specimen trees, 100 to 200 gallons of water every day is what they're extracting out of the soil. Now that sounds like a lot, and we'll say that that's equivalent to an inch of water per week. When you get an inch of rainfall, we've had good rains recently, when you get an inch of rainfall, understand you're getting 27,152 gallons of water on an acre with 1 inch of rain that's being stored in your soil. So our soil can store and make a lot of that water available. You have sandy soil or you're not getting the rain, then that 100 to 200 gallons of water is the right number to be thinking about. What about fertilizer? A lot of people say, well, I don't have any pecans, I need to put out fertilizer. And I will tell you, fertilizer is a beneficial thing, but it's not a difference maker for a pecan crop. It's the sunlight, it's the water, it's the pests and diseases that are the bigger issue. But certainly, fertilizing, don't get your hopes up, may not change the picture of pecan production in your yard whatsoever. If you do want to fertilize, it is good to do that in the springtime when 80+% of the leaves are actually made, March, April, and May. And so getting fertilizer to the tree in the very early part of the springtime is the right time to do that. You need nitrogen. There's all these nutrients a tree needs. Most of those are there. Nitrogen is typically washed out, leached out of the soil, and something that you need to apply every year to keep plants green and thriving and growing vigorously. And so nitrogen is what we're looking for. There's a lot of different forms of nitrogen, things that you can buy in bags, grass clippings. Yeah, they break down into small amounts of nitrogen that get returned back to a plant's root system. But you need to identify a nitrogen source that and understand how much nitrogen is in it. Blood meal, for example, is about 14% nitrogen by weight. So that's a low amount. If you put the right amount out, you can do a decent job of adding the nitrogen you need on an annual basis for your pecan tree. NP and the other things, phosphorus, potassium, they're important too. I have a chart here, and so we can tell you on a per tree basis what you need to put out. Typically, just as a shortcut, if you have a large, old, mature pecan tree, a 40-pound bag of tree and shrub fertilizer, 10, 10, 10, 13, 13, 13, broadcast widely under that tree, realizing that the roots go twice the distance of the limb spread of the tree, will get you the right amount of fertilizer for that tree's annual needs. All right, so that's your technical knowledge. Pecans are nutritious. There's an American Pecan Council that's a great resource, a website for all the nutritional things and recipes. If you're into cooking with pecans and want to know about how they're good and healthy for you, that's an option. The last thing I'll leave you with is a little bit of shameless plugging. The orchard that I take care of, that Mr. Bryson started, is self-sustaining. We get no money from Texas A&M University. We get no money from the extension system other than our salaries. So we have 65 acres of pecan trees, and we have to pay for the fertilizer and the water and the harvesting with selling the crop. So we sell the crop to people, directly to customers, because the wholesale market for pecans today is very, very low. It's not sustaining pecan growers, which is another problem and another discussion. We sell pecans year-round. I have them today in a dedicated refrigerator on campus. I brought them with me. If you want to buy pecans today, we can make that happen. I'm not here to push pecans on you, but if you want to take some today and it's convenient for you, we can set you up. We have halves, pieces. We have these little 3-ounce, what we call snack packs. And the new crop will come on in October. This is 2024 crop. It's still in pretty good condition. We have a website. We will ship pecans to your friends or relatives in other areas. The A&M brand makes for good gift giving. And so if you have gift-giving ideas or wants or needs, we can help you. If you'd like to know what we're doing weekly throughout the pecan season, let me have your email address. I'll put you on our email listserv, and you'll get things like my pecan press, kind of updates what we have and when. We're planning to do an open house event that we've not done for the public this coming late September, early October, and have an open house event out at our orchard, open the gates and let you come out and see us shake and harvest a pecan tree and see what it takes to get these pecans out of the tree into a bag. We send them to a commercial sheller who puts them in the package that you see here today. But we think some of our customers, some of you maybe even have bought pecans from us, and we appreciate that. It's a great relationship with the community, and so we want to continue to let you know what we have, where we do it, why we do it, and how we do it. That's a lot. I'm out of time. Any questions that any of you have about the history, how to grow pecans?